substitute already?
They should, yes.
Great. Delegate Garrett, would you like to explain the substitute, or would you like council to report it?
So I can speak to the substitute. What the substitute does is takes into account the concerns of a number of stakeholders in this process to bring this legislation to a point where there's no one in opposition. When we speak
Delegate
more
Garrett,
directly
just
to
one
the...
second. Council, could you, I think he gave you hard copies. Could you hand them out right there? Or if you can pass them back to me.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Yep, thank you. Please continue, Delegate Garrett.
So this is, am I presenting the bill or am I explaining the nature of the
You would explain your substitute,
Okay.
and then we will move.
What
so
we
that
do is
could
address
probably be before
concerns
us.
brought to us from the tire manufacturers, the Auto Dealers Association, the Independent Auto Dealers Association, the Forestry Waste Management, Sierra Club, River Keepers, et cetera, to bring, these are all really minor technical changes to make sure there's peace in the valley on this legislation. So there's nothing of significant note changed by the amendments except creating a bill that has a more comprehensive understanding of the various stakeholders in the area.
Thank you. I think we need a motion to move the substitute so it can be before us. There's a motion. It's been seconded to move the substitute. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? Great. The substitute is now properly before us. If you can please explain your bill.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Harry Truman said something that Ronald Reagan stole, and I point that out because I think it's actually relevant. Harry Truman, a Democrat president, once said, "It's amazing what you can accomplish when you're not concerned with who gets the credit." And I believe Ronald Reagan had a sign to that effect on his desk, but it was Harry Truman's quote. This bill creates a regulatory structure that captures the life cycle of a tire after it's removed from its primary use as a tire on a passenger vehicle. It doesn't apply to 18-wheelers or dump trucks or buses. It creates a three-tiered system of producer, hauler, and finally recycling or processing for tires. It requires the use of haulers and processors and recyclers to bring Virginia online with the status quo in 46 other states in the nation. The reason I said it's amazing what you can accomplish when you're not concerned with who gets the credit is because this bill will become law. It might not become law as my bill, and that's okay. I have room for chief co-patrons. I'll give the bill to somebody. But right now, Virginia is among the 6th worst states in the nation, and I've read 4th on waste tire management. There is currently sitting unaccounted for in Virginia right now a tire for every man, woman, and child in Fairfax County. That's well over 1 million tires. I am so blessed and fortunate to get to enjoy the natural resources of this beautiful Commonwealth in the form specifically of the James River. And I cannot put a canoe in at Hatton Ferry and float 2 miles down to my family's property without passing over hundreds of tires. And it's disgusting, and it's shameful, and it's our fault. We got our system of tire management implemented in the 1980s. It was relatively cutting edge for its time. In 1990, we created a 50-cent per tire fee that you would pay when you bought a tire. That created a surplus in the Virginia budget specifically for waste tire management that's equated to about $2 million a year. Last year was only $1.6 million, but about $2 million a year in Virginia. We have a budget amendment with this bill. It claws that money back. Because right now, this will shock the members of this committee who've been here for a while, they've raided the budget amendment dedicated to waste tire management. I'm not here to lay blame. I'm not here to fix blame. I know what administration did that. I'm here to fix the problem. So we're clawing back money that's already in the budget for waste tire management. Additionally, and this is something that I haven't historically done, it raises a fee. Why? Because it costs money to be environmentally responsible. In 1990, when the 50-cent fee was implemented, the cost of a gallon of gas was under $1. It's a little bit higher than that now. That was 50 cents per tire or $2 per car. We would raise that to about $1.50, exactly $1.50 per tire or $6 per car, which would not have a negative impact based on what our conversations were with the VAIADA and the VADA, et cetera, on car or tire sales, right? But let me tell you what's going on right now. Unscrupulous tire managers will leave tires out where the public can access them, and people who are perhaps down on their luck or suffering from secondary problems like addiction will pull in a pickup truck in communities like the ones where I live. They will, under the cover of darkness, throw all the tires in the waste pile in the back of the truck, knowing that maybe 1 out of 3 or 1 out of 4 can be resold for $5 or $10. They will then take them somewhere else out of the light of day and sort through the tires and say, okay, these 25% can be resold for $5 or $10. They'll sell those, and the other 75% will go into our fields, into our streams, onto our farmland. We have heard, not just from folks in the Sierra Club and the River Keepers, we've heard from the Cumberland County Sheriff's Office about the problem. I've heard from multiple county administrators about the problem. And as we learn more about the impacts of forever chemicals on not just ourselves, but our planets, our planet, we ain't got one of them, wouldn't it be nice to take this responsible step towards addressing that as it relates to waste tire management in the Commonwealth of Virginia? So, again, I'll circle back. I had a bill killed that would have changed the word fax, F-A-X, to email. And whatever. I hope that whoever did that enjoys it. But this is good policy. This is bipartisan policy. And Virginia needs to catch up to 46 other states. It's shameful. And I invite any one of you, and I mean it, to come out to the James River and float with me from Hatton Ferry in Scottsville down to a place that I'm fortunate enough to have because my family made some good choices, and see those tires laying on the bottom of that river and think about what they're doing to the fish and the wildlife, not just where I live, but downstream all the way to the Chesapeake Bay. So, ladies and gentlemen of the committee, Madam Chair, I hope it pleases the committee to advance this legislation. If it doesn't, again, I have chief co-patron spots. I'll give somebody the bill.
Thank you.
But this is something that needs to happen in Virginia.
Thank you, Delegate. Are there questions from the committee?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Delegate Bloxham.
So I'm trying to figure out businesses that are licensed to pick up and transport tires. And then down here, it looks like we're going to, I'm assuming the DEQ is going to be the department that verifies who's going to pick up the waste tires.
I got to go to my notes, but that's my recollection. What I don't want to do is tell you something that's not true. I'm about 99.4% certain that that's correct. It's DEQ, yes, sir.
Follow-up question?
There's.
Delegate Bloxham.
So I guess in this application, because I'm assuming this is a 30,000-foot view, and to implement this, I'm more concerned with how it actually is going to work, mainly because I'm probably the only tire dealer in the General Assembly. So, and I can explain to you the way I get rid of waste tires, but I'm looking down to make sure that this doesn't unduly hurt my area, that I'm not so sure I have anyone that is licensed by the department, so I'm curious how that would work. I'm curious as to, when you say repurpose, I have people that actually, and they don't go through my tire pile in the midnight, they go through during the day because I asked them to. A recycling center, I'm curious as to what's going to qualify as a recycling center or processing center. So I mean, there's some issues with this bill. I'm just trying to work through the actual implementation of it, if you could help me out there.
Right. So I have a gentleman on video who is a waste tire recycler and works with waste tire haulers in the Commonwealth of Virginia, who brought this problem to my attention and vociferously advocated on behalf of this legislation. And I apologize to the delegate because I don't want to seem like I'm being rude, but he literally texted me and said, I will address all of Delegate Bloxham's questions. Not making that up. So.
Great, thank you. I think, is this Mr. Elliot Harding you're referring to?
Yes, ma'am, Madam Chair.
All right, maybe we can bring him on. Mr. Harding, good morning.
Chairwoman, thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Did you catch Delegate Bloxham's questions, and would you be able to speak to them?
Sure. Absolutely. First, I want to note that Delegate Bloxham, I am a owner and the managing member of a LLC that it would qualify as a hauler in this definition and a recycler. What this legislation does is right now we are a hauler, and by volition, by our own choice, we are certified waste tire haulers with the DEQ. It's not required. This would allow for a requirement to take place, and then your entity would likely qualify as a defined producer, and that in your regular course of business, you're likely in the regular disposal of more than 50 waste tires a year. All your entity would have to do is register. There's not a heightened requirement of massive application requirements or anything as a producer, but you would have to use us or any of our competitors that are permitted as haulers. So the hauler that you're likely already using to remove your waste tires would likely qualify. I'd imagine that the delegate's using a above board disposal process. Some of your competitors aren't. They're using someone from down the street that Delegate Garrett referenced that very well may be dumping them on the cheap. As to processors or recyclers, there's two different definitions there. Ultimately, the recycler is looking to repurpose or convert the raw material to an alternative use. Now, I'll note that the resale of a fine, certified, totally fine used tire is also encompassed in the definition of recycling. We all drive on used tires. And so the idea that a second go around on such tire is permitted, that's within the definition of recycler, but the processor is the one that's ultimately disposing of the final end-use tire. So there's a difference between the recycler and the processor, if that somehow addresses the delegate's questions.
Delegate Bluxham, do you have follow-up?
Follow-up question, Madam Chair. So can you explain a processing facility to me? What exactly is going to be the processing facility?
So the processing
Mr. Elliott, I'm sorry, Mr. Harding.
So the processing facility is likely the final end-use facility that you're already having your tires end up at. These are folks that chip, scrap, bundle, bind, shred, and then and as to the final end use of a tire, very often processor very well may be selling them or not selling them, paying qualified landfills, and landfills very often use them to line their landfills or things like that. But processors oftentimes find alternative uses too, whether they be in-state, out-of-state, things like that. The final end use of a scrap, of a dead tire, as I would call it, there's no perfect solution yet. Thankfully, this bill will put funds back into the coffers to incentivize recycling and end use so that we can innovate as to what is a clean and good final use of a scrap tire. But the processor is the one that's killing it, I would say, right? And that is they're tearing it up, shredding it, scrapping it, cutting it up, and getting it to that final end use, whereas a recycler is trying to repurpose it.
Thank you, Mr. Harding. Are there other questions from committee members? Delegate Glass.
Gratitude, Madam Chair. And forgive my ignorance here. I see licensing, and I'm wondering, is this putting a new requirement on DEQ? I think that's the department that we established to create a licensing process form. And if so, are they prepared to do such tasking?
Right. So I appreciate the delegate's question, Madam Chair. So DEQ currently licenses volunteer facilities who wish to engage in this process. This would require that they be licensed. So I think the answer to your question, and I'm not trying to be like dodgy, is yes and no. Some facilities are already doing this, and DEQ is already doing this with those facilities. This would make all of them do it so that we could track them. The goal being obviously to keep the tires out of our woods, our rivers. I mean, I live in a rural area. But I'll bet you that there are places in urban areas where people are dumping waste tires. And there are impacts of this that we don't even know, I think.
Delegate Garrett, I think Director Rollbland is here if he wants to come up and talk about the DEQ process that's current and what's been laid out in the substitute. That would be wonderful.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Mike Rollband, Director DEQ. Thank you for inviting me up. First of all, we have no position at this time, but I can answer technical questions. There is a problem with waste tires in the Commonwealth, and everything the delegate has said is factually true. The fee is now 50 cents per tire, the same as it was in 1991, I think it was. We have a budget since three administrations ago. Governor McAuliffe started moving some of the money. It's in our budget now. We move $1.8 million out of that fund every year to supplant our stormwater program, because So that's another issue. We're working on a fiscal impact with DPB, our finance staff. We are estimating there is a fiscal impact. This is going to be more work. So that's just a fact of life. Is there any other questions I can answer?
Delegate Glass, do you have a follow-up?
No, thank you, Madam Chair.
Great. Thank you very much, Director.
You're welcome.
Delegate Krizek?
Director.
Madam Chair,
Delegate
I'm
Krizek
sorry.
has a question.
The reason we increased the fee from 50 cents to $1.50 per tire is to offset that cost. So we think we've covered the fiscal impact, and tragically for my core constituencies, we probably increased it and then some, or covered it and then some.
Thank you, Delegate. This bill does have a letter to be referred to appropriations if it makes it out of our subcommittee and full committee, and they will kind of figure out the fiscal impact and aspect of it. Delegate Krizek.
I think we've answered the question, Madam Chair, but I just wanted to say that I thank the delegate for bringing this bill. This is not just your district that has this issue. We, Senator Servell and I have been doing the annual creek cleanup in Mount Vernon, and without fail, there's at least 3 to 4 or 5, 6 tires there every year, and so this is definitely a big problem. I just hope that this $1.50 or $2, I thought it said in the bill, is going to be enough, but we can always come back in the future and make that larger if we need to, because we really need to get rid of these tires. So thank you very much for bringing this forward.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Delegate Bluxham.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Question to Director Rollban.
Director. Thank you.
So I just want to make sure who you can license. So my process right now is we take a 6-wheel truck ourselves to the local landfill. We used to slice them ourselves, but it's cheaper for us to let them slice them. Are they going to be considered a processing center, and do they have to get licensed with you in order to dispose of the tires?
Well, this bill actually requires us to develop regulations. So that in the regulatory process, we'll spell all that out. And that's one, concern we note is just the time it's going to take to go through the full APA process. We may not make the deadlines in this bill in terms of doing that, but the concept is we have a regulatory process, we have a stakeholders advisory group, so people like yourself or others could participate in defining how we are going to do this. So it's not, it's not laid out exactly because we would get input from the public. The other thing is to think about is the biggest problem with waste tires right now is the lack of demand for the product. So Shenandoah, the Northern Shenandoah Valley Regional Commission recently got a $3.9 million grant to buy machinery to develop a better reprocessing system. The American-sized civil engineers used waste tires in their asphalt mix when they repaved 3 years ago or so. It's been done on a test basis by VDOT. It's used in a dozen or so states. So another thing to think about in the future is asking VDOT to change their specs to encourage or require a certain amount of waste tires mixed in the asphalt, because we need a product or a demand. We used to burn this in North Carolina primarily. That plant is shut down now because of the air emissions issues. There's a couple companies looking at pyrolysis of tires, but they haven't yet finalized their technology and applied for a permit. They just talked to us. So there's the demand side as well. But it's a real tire. I mean, we joke about tires being an obligate plant definition for wetlands. If you see tires sitting in an area, it's usually a wetland. People dump them there all the time. Same thing with the stream. So it's a problem that needs to be solved. It's going to take a combination of solutions. And as we go through the regulatory process, I think we can get there.
Are there any other questions? All right. Are there folks in the audience who want to speak in support of the bill? Oh, I'm sorry.
Madam Chair, I don't want anyone to ever think I misled them. Excuse me. The status quo is 50 cents per tire for a total of $2 per vehicle. The increase would be $1.50 per tire, so a total of $2 per tire on top of the increase.
Right.
So
Thank you for that
I
clarification.
just didn't want y'all to think I was using fuzzy math.
Great. Hold. I know I just asked for witnesses in support, but I see that Delegate Hernandez has his hand raised. So 1 second. Thank you. Delegate Hernandez.
Just going back to that very point around the increase in the fee, I guess I just wanted to ask someone from the department who was just up here whether he believes, since we're still awaiting the FIS, if it is your opinion that that would offset the cost of the additional work. under this
Director.
bill.
It should offset the cost.
Thank you very much. All right. Folks who are here to support this bill, please come forward.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, Corey Connors with the Virginia Forestry Association. We've talked about a lot of natural areas and rivers, but private forest landowners are having huge problems with illegal tire dumping. It impedes forest management. It causes significant environmental damage. It restricts recreational land access. And just as an example, one member reported a cleanup last year of about 75 tires that required them to get an excavator to get dump truck time, a bulldozer to haul these materials to a recycling facility that was literally hundreds of miles away at a cost of several $1,000s to remove 72 tires. So anything that we can do to curtail the illegal dumping of tires and certainly to assist forest landowners with the cost of doing so, we're going to be in support of.
Thank you very much. Good morning.
Good morning. Madam Chair, members of the committee, Nathan Thompson, James River Association. We support the bill and we appreciate the delegates' enthusiasm for the James River.
Thank you. Good morning.
Madam Chair, Pat Calvert, Virginia Conservation Network. We do not have a position on this particular bill, but we certainly appreciate the intent and the concern from the delegate about the rampant mismanagement of tires and dumping in rivers. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Good morning.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Mariah Fitzhugh with the Virginia Automotive Association. We are in support of this bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any folks in the audience who is here in opposition to the bill? Okay. Delegate Glass.
Madam Chair, I have a motion at the appropriate time.
Madam Chair.
Delegate Bluxham.
Just one final comment on this. So, you know, I think I am doing it correctly. It gripes me that the state has raided the fund that was supposed to solve this problem 30 years ago. So I'm not concerned about myself doing the correct thing. The problem's going to be the ones throwing it in the woods are still going to throw them in the woods. They're going to avoid paying the tax. They're going to get the tax and avoid paying the tax. So I'm not really sure we're going to solve the problem that we're trying to solve. And I'm not really sure that this is really ready yet for prime time. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Delegate Bloxham.
Madam Chair.
I'm sorry. Who just called my name? Oh, that was Delegate Garrett. Would you like a final word?
Yes, ma'am, Madam Chair. To the delegate's point, unless you steal the tires, you're not going to avoid paying the tax because the tax is implemented when the tires are sold to the individual from the dealer of the tires on the front end. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to return. I think Delegate Glass, you had indicated.
Madam Chair, I move to report and refer to appropriations. This with the substitute.
Second.
There's been a motion to move the substitute and refer it to appropriations. That's been properly seconded. Mr. Clerk, if you could please open the roll. Delegate Garrett, House Bill 496, the substitute has been by a vote of 4 to 6, has been moved to, the subcommittee recommends reporting and referring House Bill 496 with substitute to appropriations.
Madam Chair, I want to thank the committee, and I want to specifically thank my staff and Jenny Wood, who put in a lot of work to make me understand this.
Thank you, Delegate Garrett.